At least have $15.
Used to have them one of them had taped on it.
Oh, yeah, on the back. So I've got a bunch of them. And they're peace dollars, they're not more than that. At least the ones I have are peace dollars, not more than
Mr. Mayor, inside.
that.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Donald Hewish.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales. Present. Councilmember Mitch Lindemann.
Present.
Councilmember Dani Acosta. Councilmember Ray Shelton.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Valdenegro.
Present.
Councilmember Jose Grijalva.
Here.
Interim City Manager / City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa.
Present.
And Mr. Mayor, we are waiting on Mrs. Acosta's response.
Thank you very much. Item number 4, presentation discussion on airport operations status report. This report is being made this evening to bring us and the public up to date on what's going on at the airport, some needs out there, and so that we can understand more fully the operation that's there. Mr. Pedrosa.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. As the Mayor mentioned, this is an update, and we're on the airport, and we are also informing the Mayor and Council as to the not just the needs, but also what's going on out there, what are the current inventory items that we have in place, and activities. So go ahead and get started. First, just a little history about our airport. We all know, established in the early 1900s, originally as a military base, also known as Camp Douglas. It's the first city with an international airport in the U.S. It began commercial service flights in 1928 or 1929, and it was established as an airmail route in 1930. And a point of interest was that the women's transcontinental air race, also known as the Powder Puff Derby, made overnight stops in Douglas, and Amelia Earhart visited Douglas Municipal Airport.
Just a minute, Mr. Pedrosa. Please show them that Mrs. Acosta is with us.
Thank you.
So, about our airport. Our airport is non-NIPIAS, so it's NIPIAS stands for the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, and that's that it's not an FAA airport. It's not regulated by the federal government, and the reason for that is the proximity to BDI, that is a NIPIAS airport, and the close proximity, which is within the 20-mile radius, basically doesn't allow that designation to us. So what that means is we're not eligible for federal funding. What we are eligible is that we are a state airport under the ADOT Aeronautics Division. We submit a 5-year capital improvement plan to ADOT every year and seek funding that way. We do compete with 67 other airports across the state, and funding is variable every year. It just depends on how the legislature funds ADOT that year for the Aeronautics Division, and it depends on all the projects that they have, and they disperse funding accordingly. Our current uses at the airport include recreational, personal transportation, and corporate and business transportation. So about our airport, what's out there, our inventory, we have a runway 03-21 as our designated runway. It's 5,760 feet long, about 75 feet wide. We have a partial parallel taxiway on the northwest side. It's not fully completed on the southwest side. Connector taxiway to the apron area, so we do have that taxiway for airplanes to get there. And navigational aids there are runway lighting known as PAPI lights, taxiway lighting, beacon, runway markings, and a wind socket. We have the large community hangar that we store various aircraft there. We have the small hangar that is dedicated to Lifeline, and an aviation terminal trailer, also known as the pilot's lounge, and the office where FBO operates out of. We have visitor parking there available by the office trailer. Other features are the airport museum. There's also 2 vacant buildings on the west side there next to our trailer. The main apron, which is utilized for tie down as well as fueling. We have the T hangars there comprised of 10 different units. The self-serve, self-pay 100 loaded fuel facility is right in the middle of the apron, of the main apron, and the self-serve Jet A facility is off a little bit to the east. We have 2 above-ground fuel tanks, the Lifeline trailer, and security fencing, which is partially complete. So what are some recent improvements that have happened over at the airport? In 2008, we installed that self-fueling, self-pay station for the 100 loaded, which is typically for the aircraft. And that really brought some efficiencies in place in not having to necessarily man that area for fueling, so they could do it themselves, or they could still ask for help from our FBO. We could service them either way. The taxiway was resurfaced in 2014. We also installed some fencing. That was phase 1, about 1,900 feet in 2015. And phase 2 of the fencing project took place. It was about 7,000 feet, which completed going all the way, completing all of the west side and most of the southern part. We did some water line improvements and land improvements, and that was when the border wall contractors moved in. They helped with those improvements to service their area there. Gate and culverts at the new entrance also, that was their expense there. And we also conducted an environmental study in 2020, which prepped us for any improvements to the runway. That was a requirement for us to be considered for that runway grant. So in total, we have done about $562,770 in capital improvements, let's say over the past 12 years. As far as funding is concerned, most of these were funded through the ADOT Aeronautics, except for the ones funded by the private contractor. And the self-fueling station and the environmental study was funded by the city. So what are the based aircraft out at the airport? Currently we have 4 aircraft in the community large hangar. We have one helicopter, which is the Lifeline helicopter stationed at the small hangar. We have 7 aircraft in the T hangars. 2 units are currently being used as storage, and 1 is currently vacant. As far as rental revenue for those units, the community hangar rental revenue is about $7,200 per year, and the small hangar from Lifeline is $14,700, and the land lease for their trailer for Lifeline is $2,700 a year. Off to the left, you see the base aircraft historical data of from 2007. We had 27 base aircraft, and it has gone down all the way down to about 11 aircraft this year, or 2020. Another thing to mention, the rental is of the border wall contractors who are currently remitting $15,000 per month out there. Fuel sales, this is, we don't keep track of landings out there, but fuel sales are mostly indicatory of that, of the operations out there. Also, if you look at it, we tracked this since 2009. It peaked in 2010 and really went down and has kind of remained flat throughout. So the black line is total fuel sales, and the orange line is under low lead, which are the aircraft, and the Jet A are typically helicopters. So as you can see, it's really been relatively flat throughout, and 26% decrease from 2009 to 2020. And if you measure that peak, which may have been just a special year that year, a 57% decrease comparing it from 2010 to 2020. And this is all in gallons. The next slide shows the sales in dollars, which is relatively the same pattern as you can see. It represents about a 12% decrease from 2009 to 2020, or 44% decrease from 2010 to 2020. Next slide shows an operational history for the past 5 years, and including the new budget. Basically, the revenue and the expenditures that we brought in for those years, and the required subsidy at the end of that year. Basically, throughout the years, we haven't exceeded $100,000 in general fund subsidy. Under the capital line items, we have done some capital improvement projects, most of which we've said have been funded through the Aeronautics grant, which gets funded at about 90%, and the city comes up with a 10% match. This year, we're scheduled to have about a $93,078 subsidy. We do have some capital projects out there. Program, mainly it's the restrooms at the museum and the purchase of a new mower. So let's talk a little bit about the needs at the airport, which are you'll see it's a list that we've collected, and really we've gathered a lot of data from the airport master plan that was developed in 2017. But really our most pressing needs, and what we've been trying to seek funding for, our runway. And the runway is, as we've reported in the past, it's not in the best shape right now. When we looked at the grant last year to get the $1.8 million funded to make repairs it would have covered the mill and overlay, which still, it was $2.1 million. So we were, the city needed to match $480,000 for that project. And as we know, we decided not to take that on, as you know, we knew other pressing needs, as well as the COVID pandemic at that time, but a lot of uncertainty. Therefore, we did not accept that grant. But we also learned that what is truly recommended out there is the complete reconstruction of that runway, bringing a 20-year useful life, but that comes at a price tag of $4.4 million. A kind of a middle-of-the-road reconstruction with a milling base, which brings about a 10 to 15-year life cycle, is about $3.3 million. And the very least we can do is mill and overlay would give us a 7 to 10-year useful life. Again, that was a 2.1 million figure we were targeting. Runway lighting is also needed out there. Complete reconstruction, new conduit, new electrical, was about $289,000. Phase 3 of the security fencing project, just fully enclosing the remaining parts of the airport, would cost about $400,000. An actual dedicated heliport, we currently don't have that. Even though Lifeline is stationed out there, they don't have their dedicated heliport. That would cost about $220,000. Rehabbing of the main apron. The main apron needs some maintenance work. It's about $200,000. New terminal building, something small, and would be at about $75,000. Another recommendation from the master plan was a weather reporting station, both for navigational aid as well as weather reporting in general, $150,000. And a new beacon light. Our beacon light is currently outdated and difficult to maintain, with parts getting just harder and harder to get. It's about $150,000. So overall total project needs is about $3.6 million, and that's considering the $2.1 million option for the runway. So as we mentioned, we submit our 5-year capital improvement plan to ADOT Aeronautics every year. We submit that sometime in August. So this year's plan, what we do is we get with our consultant, and they guide us as to what projects are most likely to get funded based on our needs. Obviously, we have our needs, but also we want to improve our chances to be funded. As we know, we're competing against 67 other airports in the state with very limited funding. Security fencing is something that they look at, and we put that at the top of our list. And also, it's just been a lot of different issues that we have with the airport being open, and we have a lot of unauthorized access and vehicles using the runway that aren't supposed to. So we would hope that securing that area would bring that to a stop. Heliport construction, rehabbing the main apron, the weather reporting equipment, and the new beacon light. Again, weighing those that were presented in the master plan, but as well as looking what is best chances of getting funded. And as mentioned, all of these projects require a 10% match from the city. Other needs that need to be looked at for the airport, we need to rehab the large hangar that hasn't been looked at in a while. We need to modify or construct a new small hangar. They're running out of space there, Lifeline is. We need to replace the 100 low leg self-service station or repair it. I know we've been having some issues there. We need to construct a full parallel taxiway. Ideally, that's what we would like, is to have not just the half that we have right now on the northwest side, but build it out through the length of the runway so that aircraft can turn around more easily. Rehab the T-hanger apron, that's also in need of some maintenance work. Ideally is the expansion of utility services out to the airport. We do have water and sewer, but sewer is one of the areas that we were looking at to bring out to the airport to allow for more non-aviation use. Adding more runway protection zones. Ideally, we don't have the protection zones that are recommended. So that would mean acquiring more land or more right of way to the ends of the runway. Instrument approach procedures are something that can also be looked at implementing, and installing a crosswind runway, which is just very expensive, but certainly that's another recommendation that came about in the master plan. So this is also from the master plan, just taking a look at what our strengths and weaknesses are currently at the airport. And some of those are airport capabilities, available land, the location at the border patrol facilities, business-friendly, community support, convenience, flight training potential, the free trade zone, having fueling available, good weather, the museum, there's room for expansion, strong leadership, and having customs there. Again, these were all points from the master plan that were gathered through various input from various individuals and our consultants. Our weaknesses are currently an aging population, the aging infrastructure that we went over, funding issues, general business decline, insufficient operations budget, lack of marketing plan or a cohesive one, low public awareness, not a scheduled public transportation area. The pavement weaknesses, like we mentioned, the runway, taxiways, and aprons. Perceived international airspace issues, which we know that the proximity to the border caused those. It's underdeveloped, the utility infrastructure, and the understanding of the Douglas market. So what are the opportunities and the threats? The opportunities that we can increase corporate traffic, the new terminal and a development space would also help. Business or an industrial park, more focused advertising, medical tourism, growing population in Mexico, the customs service that we mentioned, the potential to charter, hangar and aviation storage, land development, and possibilities of increased grant funding through ADOT, current favorable airport fee structure. The threats are the unsecured funding, as we mentioned, we submit our report every year, but are not guaranteed any funding. Border security precautions, regional airport competition, passport regulations on the Mexican side, current limited maintenance funding, limited staff, poor runway, the PCI index, that's the condition of our runway, the lack of infrastructure, the rising cost, and the waning general aviation interest overall. With that, Mayor, I'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Pedrosa. Any questions, comments, input from the council?
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, please, Mr. Lindeman.
excuse me. Mr. Pedrosa, this is very nice, and thank you very much. It's very succinct. But one question that comes to my mind, having not been out there, is when they talk about a Crosswind Taxiway, do we have enough room for something like that?
Councilmember Lindeman, the Crosswind runway, yes, there are actual plans in place for that. It would just basically be make an X to the existing runway and run it the other way. I don't know if it's the ideal runway space that you would like, but certainly there are plans drawn for that. It's just a matter of getting that constructed, which is the challenge.
Right, okay. How many users are out there now?
We have about 11 aircraft that are stationed out there. And obviously we have the border wall contractors currently stationed out there, which is a different story. But as far as stationed aircraft, it's 11.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Anybody else? Yes, please, Mrs. Acosta.
Do you know if we've ever reached out to federal agencies that have aircraft to see if they would like to form some kind of partnership to maybe house some of their stuff and see if we can somewhat get more use out of it? I know it's in a run-down position, but maybe by forging those partnerships, that can help with the usage and funding.
As far as stationing there, no, I don't believe we've reached out, but they do use our facilities quite a bit. We have Border Patrol and other federal, I believe USDA, or the Forest Service, have stopped by there. They like to use our facility for fueling. And for helicopter aircraft, we only have tie down. We don't have like shelter spaces or anything like that. So I can imagine that would be a concern to them. But certainly they do use our facilities whenever they need fueling. That we know that's one of their go-to places whenever they're in the area. But as far as the partnerships that you mentioned, I don't believe we've done any in the past.
I don't know if that's maybe something we can look into, see if there's any interest.
Certainly can.
Mayor?
Yes, please, let me go to Mr. Shelton first.
Okay.
Why has it gone from 24 to 11 in the last 12, 15 years?
Mr. Shelton, I think I would be just by basing myself off of the trend. I think there's just been the interest level of keeping aircraft, or just how expensive it is to keep aircraft maintained and used for either recreation or other stuff. It just has been, those costs have risen throughout that period of time. And I can imagine that could be a reason why they have either stopped practicing in general aviation or have sought somewhere else to go. But that's typically what we've seen or heard out there.
Okay, then also, I know during our meeting, once again, I guess we have a grant writer again, or we have one. I've been wanting it for 7 years. We need to see what we can do with other grants, and then also maybe go to some of these big aircraft businesses like Boeing or whatever, and see if they might want to help us. Of course, I know Boeing is in sort of dire straits right now, but there's other aviation companies out there, and maybe see, and another thing too, you know, a lot of people have airplanes, and they just like to travel all over the country, land, stay 2 or 3 days, check everything out, and I don't know, hopefully, I'm sitting here thinking, well, we have, we're trying to get the new port of entry in. We're trying to help our golf course, and now this, you know, for a small town, it seems like we're putting our money, I don't know, however little we have, a little here, a little there, a little here, you know. Maybe we need to come together and just decide what do we want, an airport or golf course, or do we want to continue our march out here to see if we can get a new port of entry in? Well, we're you know, I don't know. Okay, that's my comments, and I think we do need a airport, and part of me says it, but we have the airport out at the county airport right now. Do they want us to take that over? I've heard rumors.
Mr. Shelton, yes, they came and presented to the council a while back ago.
Yeah.
To, I think really that if there's interest from the city to take over that operation out there, they made a presentation about it. But I think that the county is kind of sort of in the same boat as we are in whether they want to be operating a
Airport or not.
Right.
So I think maybe the council, maybe we need to sit down and see where our priorities are on these 3 major items, because you know, we don't have the money to, I think, be dealing with all 3 of these major projects right now. That's my.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Mr. Lindeman?
Thank you. I just was remembering, if my memory is correct, that I believe Eleanor Roosevelt was the one that dedicated our airport for us back in the day.
Were you there, Mr. Lindeman?
I missed that opportunity.
Thank you. Yes, please, Ms. Morales.
I was going to ask, on the lifeline lease that we have, how many years is that for? And then you say that the small hangar they're using, they need more space. Is there any possibility that we could increase what we charge monthly, or would they be able to contribute something to make the hangar bigger for them? Is that a possibility that we could ask them?
Ms. Morales, to answer your first question, we have a 5-year lease with them. And yes, I believe that's a conversation they wanted to have, is they're looking for more space to see how we could work that in. I know it's in our 5-year plan to get that funded. If we were to get that funded, we can probably seek out that partnership with Lifeline to help us in covering that match, or charging it through the rent, you know, some form that I think could be equitable to both parties. So I truly believe that there is an opportunity, because they do have a need out there, and they are the ones that are operating currently right now. They're constantly operating out of there. So yes.
If I may add to that, I met along with Ms. Prince, along with the Lifeline people here a few months ago, and their new helicopter unit out there needs a bigger hangar, and so they're getting some plans to us, and we've already reached out to try to make this a public-private partnership to be able to work that out, to be able to get them there. They want to be in Douglas. They feel it's very viable to be here, enjoy being here, see the need, and so I think we'll be good partners with them for quite some time.
Yes, thank you.
That might be where we could come in with a grant also, between the 3, I don't know.
We're working on something. Mr. Grijalva, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Sort of to Mr. Shelton's point, you know, Ms. Prince took me out there, and I mean, these descriptions and these pictures don't do it justice on how much work they need, especially with our employees and in the conditions that they work. And this is a big project, and it has its historical roots, and it's something that, again, even if we don't want to be in the airport business, it's something that I think we should be preserving, because again, it's one of the first airports, right? But to Mr. Shelton's point with the port of entry, you know, we're moving west for that port of entry. So if you're a business and you're coming in here, are you going to drive around across town to go to the airport, to the Douglas Airport, or are you just going to go to BDI, which would be just, you know, across the street basically. So, I mean, this is a big project. I'd like to get the community involved because it's such a big number. You know, it's not, you know, something like Mr. Shelton said, we can throw a little bit of money each year, you know, every year. This, to me, might be a bond issue where it's such a big number. That's how, you know, it would probably have to be paid for. So, I mean, I'd like to get the community involved to see what, you know, is the priority. The airport, is it, you know, trying to get BDI under our leadership? Is it the golf course? It's such a big number, and it's, you know, sort of overwhelming because, again, we're not in a situation just to say, you know, let's take care of it this year. This is, again, a multi-year project. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Anyone else?
Mayor, I have one more.
Oh, please, Mr.
question.
Lindeman.
Mr. Rios, I just got done, I mean, do we have two helicopter companies out there still? Or is it just the one?
Mr. Lennon is just the one, just
Oh.
Wi-Fi.
Okay, thank you.
But you may be hearing, Mr. Lindeman, that I know the Border Patrol, when they're down here with their helicopter, that's their choice of fueling is out there, but they're not stationed.
I thought at one time there were two, essentially ambulance helicopter companies.
Mr. Lennon, the other company was stationed out at the old hospital.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was out there, so.
Anyone else? Well, what I was hoping for in this work session is to bring this to the forefront so everyone can see what's out there. And I think at a future meeting, we really need to sit down and decide some of these things. You've all brought up very important points. We'd love to preserve it, but is it financially feasible? Should we seriously be considering a partnership with the county on BDI? When I met with the county about that issue, I told them it needs to be fixed up. We don't have money to fix it up. So it needs to be fixed up before we would even want to talk about it. So, but those are very pertinent issues, and I think we need to develop with the input of staff some benchmarks that are there that if we are able to meet them through grant funding and other things, then we proceed. But the runway is going to fall apart within probably the next 5 years. And so, you know, all those things involved, we need to, again, if we can't receive the grant funding, then there's going to come a point where we're going to have to either suspend it as an airport until we can receive funding or abandon it altogether, which I hope doesn't happen because of the great history that's out there. So that's, again, one of the reasons why this year's budget is there to help improve the museum. That's a very viable part. I know that the Kiwanis have that fly-in, which is very important to our community. But I would also like to take this time to thank the Airport Authority. Mr. Shelton sits on that board for us, representing us as the council, and I appreciate his efforts and the efforts of those fine citizens that are out there trying to make this happen realistically. And I know we have to look at everything realistically. So I appreciate the report. I appreciate the council's input. And this is an issue that's not over with. We really need to sit down and again, I believe we need to develop some benchmarks to see if we can get to certain points, and if we can't, then we're going to have to really make hard decisions on what we want to do with that. Yeah, Mr. Shelton, you had something else?
Yeah, maybe we should do like some of us went out to the golf course maybe we should go to all of us, have a meeting, adjourn it, until, we go up to the airport and just see what we really need, see what the problems are. Because we can sit here and look at papers, like Mr. Grahava said, he went out there and couldn't believe it. And then, maybe Mrs. English could set up a date, and we could all go out to, the Bisbee Douglas Airport and see what they have out there and see what, the county supervisors are thinking, and come up with, hopefully, to see about air strategies in Cochise County or southern, Cochise County with Bisbee, Douglas, and so forth.
Thank you.
I think that would be a good idea.
Great idea. The needs are there. Yeah, it's great to see them, but they're not going to get any bigger or any smaller from what we've seen. But it's good to see, so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Also, in closing, need to mention that when we're able to meet with Senator Sinema's staff, Senator Kelly, and Congresswoman Kirkpatrick's staff, we all mentioned airports, about the need for the airport, and their staff is also looking for any extra funding that we might be able to reach out for and try to secure. So it's something that we're not sitting around and waiting for our fairy godmother to come down and grant us the money to be able to fix that. We're actively trying to beat every bush that we can, and again, with the new grant writer, I'm sure that'll happen. Okay, thank you so much. Item number 5, adjournment. May I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mrs. Morales.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Morales, second by Mr. Shelton to adjourn the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned.